Good afternoon and welcome to Summer at Your Library True Crime Adult Summer Reading Program's Author Talk with Valerie Bauerlein. This program is generously funded by the Friends of the Library, and they really go out above and beyond to make events like this a success. So please join me in thanking the Friends of the Library today. Over the summer, we've offered a variety of true crime programs at all of our library locations here in New Hanover County. We want to thank all of you for participating to make this year a huge success as well. Today, we are excited to welcome Valerie Bauerlein, author of Devil at His Elbow, Alex Murdaugh, and the Fall of the Southern Dynasty. Her book offers a gripping look at the rise and fall of the Murdaugh family, exploring power, privilege, and justice in the South. Valerie will be in conversation with former editor of the Star News and true crime fan Pam Sander to share insights on her reporting process, what it was like to write this book, and how she approached this complex story. Towards the end of the session, Valerie will answer questions that were collected in advance and from the audience as well. We'll be wandering around with a microphone, so please just raise your hand and somebody will come to you. Afterwards, Valerie will be signing books in the lobby. There's a limited number of copies available for sale through Pomegranate Books, so a thank you to Pomegranate Books for being here as well. Valerie has asked a few friends to join her today. So to get us started, please join me in giving a warm welcome to award-winning syndicated columnist, New York Times bestselling author, and North Carolina native Celia Rivenbark.
Thank y'all so much. Thanks so much for that introduction. I have the great honor today of introducing Valerie Bauerlein, an award-winning journalist and celebrated author who grew up right here in Wilmington. Fun fact, I'm not sure even Val knows this, her daddy and I are Carolina Panther football buddies. We text each other during every game, rating the players and sharing our occasionally profane opinions on why the team we love is so terrible. On the rare occasions the Panthers win, we send each other texts filled with confetti and balloon emojis. Valerie is John and Rose Bauerlein's middle daughter, raised with sisters Lisa and Jessica in a house filled with books and music and conversation, both silly and profound. With the publication of The Devil at His Elbow, Valerie Bauerlein pours her nearly 30 years in journalism and her divine gift for powerful storytelling into an impeccably researched book that we are privileged to hear her discuss today with my dear friend and former boss, veteran newspaper editor Pam Sander. The Devil at His Elbow has been praised by critics and readers as brilliant, and the word every author covets, unputdownable. Valerie's writing has been unputdownable since she was a student at New Hanover High School. Her essay about a teenager grieving the death of her father led to a state writing award and a scholarship offer from Duke University. After graduation, she taught English in Japan, then returned home to figure out the next step. Her dad tells me Val ran into a friend who was working at the newspaper up in Shelby. When the friend asked what she wanted to do, Val responded, "I think I would like to do what you do." Afterwards, she got a job at the Shelby Daily Star, and her editor there told John he knew his daughter could write, adding, "Now I just have to teach her how to be a reporter." Apparently, he did a mighty fine job because Val quickly jumped to larger papers, The State in Columbia, the News Observer in Raleigh, and for the past 19 years, the Wall Street Journal, where she is a Raleigh-based national reporter writing about rural America and Southern politics, economics, and culture. Valerie does not apologize for the rural South she covers for the Journal so often. She celebrates it. She understands it. When she was researching the Murdaugh trial in tiny Hampton, South Carolina, she asked a local where the best place to eat was, and she was not surprised when the answer was, "Well, the hospital has the best fried chicken." She's covered at least a dozen hurricanes for the Journal, filing her reports from the tailgate of some obliging Southerner's pickup truck. People trust her, which is the most crucial component of being a great reporter. Valerie has covered 14 mass shootings in the South, but she has never become cynical or jaded, and she has somehow managed to have faith in the ultimate good of humanity, even after spending months covering the trial of a man who murdered his own wife and son. Valerie is Southern strong, and like many Southerners, she has a deep faith that sustains her even in the face of pure evil. I have spent decades writing about what it means to be a Southerner, so when I tell you Valerie is the real deal, you can believe it. So how do I know this? Because I saw her purse at the Murdaugh trial. Inside that clear plastic courtroom-approved purse, along with her press credential lanyard, some pens, lipstick, and a few other necessities, was the most iconic Southern necessity of all, a pack of Lance four-corner peanut butter nabs. Valerie is my Southern sister in knowing with absolute certainty, as long as you have your square nabs, you can survive pretty much anything. Valerie Bauerlein's authenticity is probably why she was the one reporter chosen from the vast press pool covering the Murdaugh trial who was allowed to accompany the jury to the murder scene. Valerie made a beeline to stand in the very spot where Maggie Murdaugh stood when she was murdered. Standing there, Val realized Maggie was shot to death just 12 steps from where her son Paul was killed. And Valerie says at that moment, she burst into tears. Now, for a reporter covering a murder trial for one of the most well-respected newspapers in the country to share this is a perfect illustration of what makes Valerie so damn good. She's not afraid to show she's human. Sure, she dutifully filled up 34 reporter notebooks over the course of the trial, but it was the things that she didn't write down that make her writing so special. For that moment, standing at the murder scene on the Murdaugh's family's sprawling hunting estate, Valerie wasn't just a reporter. She was a wife and mom of 2 children herself, intently feeling the pain of another mom. Empathy, it turns out, makes for mighty fine reporting, although I doubt they teach that in journalism school. It's no accident that the South, with our colorful language, humor, and unapologetic quirkiness, produces more celebrated writers than any other region of the country. With the devil at his elbow, Valerie Bauerlein takes her rightful place alongside the best of the best. We are so very proud. Everybody, please welcome back home a gifted journalist praised by her peers for grit, class, grace, and intelligence, one of our very own, the utterly brilliant, utterly human Valerie Bauerlein.
Can I borrow your phone? Can I borrow your phone, Dad?
Oh, here you go.
I'm gonna take a selfie of y'all. This is awesome. This is like the coolest day ever, y'all. All right, ready? Thank you. Awesome. I was already getting teary remembering being at Moselle, and then Celia really laid into it. But I've been your biggest fan since I was a teenager, so it's very exciting. I thought I would get further into this program before I started crying, but I'm so thrilled to be here with so many people that I know and love, and so many faces I haven't seen in a long time, and so many faces I haven't seen in 20 minutes. I want to give a special shout out to my mom and dad, John and Rose Bauerlein, who are right here in the front row. My mom looks beautiful. My sisters, godparents, friends, and my husband, Scott, and my kids, Amelia and Luke, right here on this side. So it's a very special day, and thank y'all for being here.
Well, I don't know how to follow that. Celia pretty much said everything, but I do want to start with this. I'm just here to ask questions of her, and hopefully she has a lot to tell you. But I do want to start with a little bit that Celia touched on, and this is really, there's a question at the end of this. Your book, well, first of all, let me tell you that I am a little bit of a crime junkie. I admit I watch court TV on a regular basis. It's often in background. However, I never watch those other reality shows like that island or bachelor, things like that. So it balances. But until I read your book, and this is the first time I'm admitting this, I really held out hope that some very crazy drug people had killed his family because he wouldn't do what they asked him to do. And just because it's just so impossible to believe. And your book, first of all, it reads like fiction, which is incredible for such a great nonfiction book. But it left no doubt what he did and what his family did forever. So I would like to start with that. When did you know that he did it?
You know, it's so funny. I spent 4 months in South Carolina researching this book. I was in court every day for 6 weeks. And towards the end of the trial, there was a long, long line of people, mostly women, but a lot from Ohio or Florida or places. And I would stop and talk with people, and I'm like, why are y'all here? Why are y'all here? And to a person, they express something similar to what you said. They said, well, I understand that a spouse could kill a spouse. I hate it. It happens all the time. But I don't understand how a man could kill his son. And I think that is the core mystery. This 450 pages, and I had to keep written right on top of my computer, on a little piece of tape. The core mystery is, how could a man kill his wife and son? That, of all the different things that happened here. And it's a level deeper than that. It took me, I wish I was smarter. It took me 18 months to realize this, but you know, we were familiar, you'll remember the Susan Smith case, not far from where you're from in South Carolina, and she drowned her young toddlers. We're familiar with that type of a crime, but it's an adult child. For a parent to kill an adult child just doesn't happen. And we grew up at Church of the Servant here in Wilmington, and are active members at a church in Raleigh, and I called my priest and I was like, hey, remind me, I know my New Testament pretty well, but Old Testament, is there any example where a father kills an adult son? And if you think about like Abraham and Isaac, he doesn't go through with it, right? He doesn't have to. And even my daughter was reading Shakespeare for high school, and I started flipping through Shakespeare and asking ChatGPT whether in Shakespeare did anyone, in all of Shakespeare, was there an adult who killed an adult child? And there was one, and it was Titus Andronicus. And he killed, and that play is not very good, and he killed like 120 people. So it's just so taboo for us to think about that. So I think the core mystery, how could he do it, layered on top of, well, and then the housekeeper fell down the stairs, and there was a young man's body in the road, Stephen Smith, and then the death of Mallory Beach in a boat crash, and then the thefts from the least of these. He robbed the poorest of the poor at their worst moment. So all of the Baroque nature of the case fascinated people, but I think that core mystery we couldn't wrap our head around. But when did I know for sure he did it? I did not go to journalism school, as Celia correctly noted. I was a French major, which is, you know, handy, I guess. But in journalism, chronology is our friend. And I built a 200-page chronology of every beat of Alex's life, and I built a 30-page chronology of every second I knew of that night. From the cell phone records, we had the benefit of huge timeline, and you could recreate, based on your phone and other records, everything that happened. And there's just no possibility anybody else did. And I still think, I spend a lot of time still in Hampton, and I think of it as like the concentric circles. The closer you live to Moselle, the less likely you are to think that he did it. I had someone, a defense lawyer I really admire, tell me yesterday, it was the drug guys who did it. And I was like, okay, well, tell me why the dogs weren't barking. Tell me why he lied, he knew when to lie about being there. And, you know, and tell me, like, how did we hear his voice? This was what convicted him more than anything. How did we hear his voice down at the kennels where he said he wasn't, 40 seconds before Paul, and y'all know, if you have teenagers, at that point Paul was 22, he was on his phone at all times. Yes. It was at all times. His phone dies, goes silent forever, Maggie's does, and 40 seconds, you know, after we hear Alex's voice, in 90 seconds. It's just not possible anybody else did it, in my mind. Sadly. And he is a lying liar who lies, and we could talk about that.
Yes.
And that was the second thing that convicted him.
So you mentioned Stephen Smith.
Yes.
I wonder, who are you still of the living, in all your research while you were there, who among the living do you have the most empathy for? And I mentioned Stephen Smith because, you know, I want it to be Buster. I mean, I did want it to be Buster. But tell us a little bit about.
That's a great question. I thought you were going to say, who among the living are you still in touch with? And I was like, well, I was texting with David Owen this morning, and I talked to Creighton Waters yesterday, and I talked to Blanca the day before. So these are people that I invested a huge amount of time, and Celia mentioned trust. Y'all, you've gone through the most disastrous, unimaginable experience of your life, that is the demarcation line. Everyone involved in this case is the June 7th of 2021 is the demarcation line between what was and what will be forever. And that is was life-changing. And the folks who trusted me with their stories, I still in touch with almost all of them, I would say. But who do I have the most sympathy for among the living? I have a lot of empathy for Sandy Smith, Stephen Smith's mom, who it's been 10 years in July since Stephen was found in the middle of the road. There are very strong working theories. The grand jury's convened about who did it, but we just don't know when we'll ever know. And spoiler, I think I've done at this point 84 or 85. I had the privilege to do a lot of events and talks about this book. And the one question I always get, and sorry to spoil it, because one of y'all would have asked it, what about Buster? Yeah. How was Buster? How's he holding up? And I love that question because it speaks to our humanity. That young man is a complicated person, and he comes from a complicated background, but he lost his mom, his brother, his grandfather 3 days later, his dad, his name, his chance at any normal life, all at the same time. So I have deep empathy for Buster. But I'm happy to say that he got married back in the spring. To Brooklyn, and if y'all watched the trial, and I know some of y'all did, my sister came down and watched it for a couple days with me. Brooklyn was his fiance that was sitting next to him every day, and they are expecting a baby in October. So, new beginnings.
You do keep up with all of them, huh? Okay, tell us I know we've talked about the case, and I could just sit here all day and talk with you about the case, but tell us a little bit about how you came. You're doing reporting for the Wall Street Journal. Life is good. And then you find yourself, and I think you said 18 months of writing time. Would you just tell us a little bit about what it's like to go from being a newspaper reporter to the author of a book like that?
It's two totally different mindsets, and it took me a long time to wrap my head around that. The Wall Street Journal, we want you to read us, and you might not know, it's like if you read a Celia column, you know it's Celia Rivenbark, right? But if you read a story by a Wall Street Journal reporter, it needs to sound like the voice of the paper and very neutral, like adverbs are not used, adjectives get you in trouble. So it's very straight. And I was writing a very straight book. And I had hired a coach to help me just wrangle it to the ground, like make a spreadsheet. What do the chapters look like? How are you going to attack getting this finished? I had a very tight deadline. And he said, Val, you're going to have to make the shift from reporter mind to author mind, because the reader needs you to make sense of it. They want you to tell them a story, beginning, middle, and end, and they want you to make meaning of it for them.
You really succeeded at
Oh, thank you. I mean, and I was like, holy crap, I'm gonna have to get out over my skis here and tell y'all what I think. But growing, I couldn't have written this story, y'all, based in Colorado or Texas or a place I'm not from. But I did spend several years as a reporter in South Carolina covering I'd been to Hampton County in my 30s, which was a long time ago now, to do a story. I know South Carolina, I know that area. I wrote my first story about Dick Harpootlian in the year 2000. So I've known him a really long time. So it was one of those things where I had enough understanding, I felt like, of the context, the petri dish that percolated and created Alec Murdaugh to try and make meaning for you.
You mentioned South Carolina,
Yeah.
and this is another thing that, just talking with you for a little bit, I'm in awe of your knowledge of the history of that state. I didn't ask you previous, but I am interested. Do you have a photographic memory? And do you know all that just from this book? I mean, you go back to the 1800s and talk about. Would you tell people how either your love for history or your grasp of it came to be?
Y'all are making me feel so...
And a lot of that's in the book, so you see that.
Y'all are making me feel very cool, but I have teenagers, so I know I'm not. So. No, I mean, necessity is the mother of invention. And so I wrote my first story about this case. I made my first trip in July of 21. The homicides were June 7th of 2021. I made my first trip in July, went back in August and September, and wrote a front page story for the Wall Street Journal after the Labor Day shooting, after Alec faked his death on the side of the road, i.e. tried to frame Eddie Smith for, anyway, we could talk about that. But so I sold the book, I sold the proposal in October of 21, before Alec Murdaugh was charged with anything related to, even before he was charged with robbing Gloria Satterfield's sons. So I sold it on the promise that there's a story in this family, even if no one is ever charged in the deaths of Maggie and Paul, and I still believe that. It is y'all are familiar with Craig Melvin, he's from South Carolina, and he said it, it's redneck Yellowstone. The previous generations are every bit as interesting to me as Alec. So I sold it in October of 21 on the hope that I could tell the story of the rural South through the lens of this family. And he wasn't charged in the homicides until July of 22. So I had 9 months or so to do the historic research. And I thought I was gonna write a book about these previous generations because that's all I had. That's all I had. But also it's just so freaking interesting. And this is a place, y'all, I mean, Hampton County is different to here. It was founded after the fall of Reconstruction to be an expressly white county. It was meant to reestablish the Confederate Old Guard, and one of the first families to move there was Josiah P. Murdaugh, who was Alec's great-great-grandfather, who was with Lee at Appomattox. His brother was killed at Petersburg. So you can't, especially anywhere in the South in general, but in South Carolina in particular, you can't talk about history without talking about race and class and poverty. And so I just I spent a really, really long time building these elaborate chronologies of each generation and trying to pare it down. I had about it seems crazy, but I had about 100 more pages that I wrote. And what got excised to keep you, hopefully, unputting it down was a lot of the history. So there are a lot of things I didn't get a chance to tell you.
So you could issue one of those addendums at some point, right? So tell me the moment, what was going on, and the moment when you found out, because it came pretty quickly, didn't it, that you had a bestseller?
Oh my gosh. Every year, my husband goes on, there's an annual trip for his work, so he's gone for the week around Labor Day. And my daughter was at her school started earlier, so it was just me and Luke. I think we were coming, my son had basketball practice after school, and I picked him up at Broughton High School in Raleigh, and I'd just gotten the call from my editor. I was parked in front of my sister's house on Devery Street when I got it, that we had made the bestseller list. And it's such a long shot to ever happen. I burst into tears, and we went to Peace Street Market, which is right, y'all know, it's right off of St. Mary's and Peace. And I bought a bottle of gas station champagne and a bottle of sparkling grape juice, and Luke and I went home and had a toast. But it was just, you know, since I can remember, since Blount Elementary School, you know, I wanted to write a book. And I've had a lot of life. I'm so fortunate, and I couldn't believe that I wanted to be a mom, and that dream came true, and I wanted to write a book, and that dream came true. I never thought it would be a murder book, but hopefully it's a stealth history book and just a story of good and evil, really.
See, that's what I figured. I'm sure it was you just felt your whole life that you had been working toward, that in that moment was, it's almost like you made it.
It was really kind of nuts. And I can remember the night the verdict came in, we were all just gobsmacked, and sitting in the courtroom, and to think that some measure of justice had been met. If you looked at the back wall, there was an empty space where old Buster Murdaugh, Alec's grandfather, the portrait was on the wall for years. Alec had spoken at the dedication of that portrait. They had to take it down so not to prejudice the jury. And I can remember sitting there beside another journalist, and he leaned over and he said, "How does it feel to know the name Alec Murdaugh will be in your obituary?"
Oh, wow.
And it will. Think about it, y'all. I mean, yeah.
Was that Michael?
It was not. Michael DeWitt from the Hampton County Guardian is a terrific local journalist,
But yeah. Okay.
I feel fortunate to be the person that got to tell this story. Right. Even though I think Alec Murdaugh is a lying liar who lies and a horrible human being, one of the questions people frequently ask me was, what was it like to work on such a tragic story and to spend so much of your life thinking about a terrible human being? Really, I have always struggled with the concept of evil, but I came to accept that it exists in the world and it found a home in Alec Murdaugh. But from the beginning, I knew he wasn't a protagonist. He's not even an anti-hero, right? Like on Breaking Bad, you kind of pull for Walter White against yourself, or Don Draper on Mad Men. That's not Alec Murdaugh. You're pulling for that guy to get caught, I hope. But I knew because the story was so rich and there were so many people affected, that there were going to be people for y'all to pull for y'all to want to see things, people who took risk. And I'm thinking of Blanca Simpson, the housekeeper and Maggie's confidant. She sang at Maggie's funeral. Or David Owen, or Creighton Waters, or Judge Newman. There were people that were taking significant risk. The Beach family. So I felt like whenever I could, I tried to flesh out the stories of those folks too, so the reader could see all the people working hard to dismantle the system.
Okay, I read a lot of the reviews in various places of your book, and the unputdownable is, and I was hard pressed to even find one that didn't speak the truth, which was, it really is an incredible book. That said, you say the closer you get to Hampton as it goes in, there are people who still don't believe it.
Still don't believe it.
How do you handle their, I'm sure, as a former journalist myself, you do get a lot of hate mail, you might say, that I don't think he did it, why do you keep reporting this? How do you handle that when you get in close to Hampton and you've got the woman at the McDonald's or...
Oh, there actually is a McDonald's in Hampton, and it's one of the only places to get a really good Diet Coke. And the first time I pulled into the parking lot, and I wasn't dressed up. I had on jeans, and I walked in there, and the woman behind the counter came over and put the drink in my hand, and she goes, "Honey, you're not from around here." And I was like, "No, I am not. What gave me away?" She said, "I knew as soon as you got out of your car, I didn't know you." Because everyone, it's a small town. Right. Everyone knows everyone. No, I never really have that issue, because I think, and y'all, I give it a 60% chance that Alec gets a new trial on the homicides. Yeah. I would not have said that a year ago. The verdict was in March of 2023. And if you'd asked me last year, I'd have said no way. But this year,
and why do you think that might? The clerk of court?
There are a number of issues, but y'all are, if you're following the case, you're familiar with the clerk of court was accused of, by some of the former jurors, of meddling in their thinking. And she recently was charged with multiple felonies related, perjuring herself when asked on the stand about whether she did that. And that is very hard for the state, the Attorney General's office, when you have a key, you're saying the clerk of court did not do this wrong thing, but she did these multiple other wrong things. That's very tricky, and is a very strong issue on appeal. And I think that, in addition, there's questions about whether the financial should have come in. All that financial information we found out about how many people he robbed, and that normally in a case you're not allowed to talk about the previous bad acts that person did. You're only there to talk about that bad act. But Judge Newman decided it was germane, so that'll be appealed as well. But mostly, I think it's just South Carolina's a different place, y'all, and politics there is a blood sport, and there is a new Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is turned over, and Judge Newman, who was America's judge and so warmly regarded, has forced to retire. Weirdly enough, he had to retire at 72. It's mandatory, which is a law that was created to get Buster Murdaugh finally out of public office. It's old Buster, because he was a solicitor from Roosevelt to Reagan, 1940 to 1986. It's extraordinary. So anyway, so Judge Newman has had to retire, and the Supreme Court Chief Justice who appointed him is off the bench as well. There's a new. It's a different political tenor. It's a more conservative, small c conservative reading of the law. They've got a better. We'll have a hearing, I think, in December or January, in front of the state Supreme Court on the appeal. It'll be a couple years before we have a new trial, but I think it's likely. But if y'all have read the book, the epilogue of the book, it is so much better to be lucky than good, and I've got lucky 1,000 bajillion times. But the epilogue of the book is the sentencing in Beaufort in November of 2023, when Alec Murdaugh it was an extraordinary moment to be in the room, because he came in the courtroom. Y'all know he came in his blazer every day and chewed on his pen, but here he was bound hand and feet. None of the family came. The bailiffs didn't look him in the eye. It wasn't his buddies from high school. The guys in Hampton he'd known forever. And he was all alone, and he pleaded guilty to all the predicate crimes, the motive. He pleaded guilty to robbing all the people the state said he did, like Hakeem Pinckney's mom and the Satterfield's boys and all those families. And that was the insurance policy for the state, because they knew there was a chance that he would get a new trial, and the defense would learn, do not let Alec take the stand. Try to get a new venue, that type of thing. And so they needed that insurance policy. So they reached a plea deal. He'll be in prison until he's 80 years old, at least. Full stop, state prison. He's tried to get his federal charges to jump the state charges so he could go to Club Fed, but they're not having it. So. He'll never see the light of day, but he might get a new trial on the homicides.
So, I don't want to look forward too much, but certainly you have the bug now. And have you, I'm assuming, and maybe you've already signed a new deal, I don't know. But what are you doing next? What's your next book?
Well,
what's the next crazy
thank you,
murder
thank you,
that
and
you are
Celia,
going
for
to tell?
the faith you have in me. I told my husband, I was like, one of these days I want another book, and he's like, you've forgotten what it was like.
It's like having a baby.
Oh gosh, so many tears. It just is such a, it was an awful lot of work, but I do, you're not supposed to read the reviews, but spoiler, I read them, and so like my sisters had read the book, and my family had read it and said nice things about it, but when strangers on Goodreads start writing about it, they don't know me, they don't have a reason to say anything nice, and people liked it, and I felt very honored by that I had pulled off somehow what I sought to do, so that was really rewarding. But Celia joked about this, about becoming a reporter, but I love being a reporter. I love it. I get itchy feet if I haven't gone out into the field in a couple weeks. It was my biggest fear writing this book, because I got into journalism because I wanted to write. I wanted to become a writer. And then I found out I loved the reporting. And an old editor of mine in Winston-Salem called me. He's like, Val, this is going to be hard for you. He's like, but just remember, you're a better writer before you're a better reporter. And he's like, you just got to strengthen that muscle. But all that is to say, I'm back at my day job at the Wall Street Journal. I've been covering a story I feel very passionately about right down the road in Horry County. It's a killing of a young man in a stand your ground case. Two white 30-year-old men armed got into a road rage incident, and the second guy followed the first guy for 9 miles. Guy A couldn't outrun him, gets out of the truck, and guy B shoots 40 times through the windshield and kills him, and goes home that night. No charges. And it's because of the stand your ground law, which is slightly different than our law. And the kid lived in Tabor City. So he was 2 miles south of the North Carolina line. The shooter would be in jail here for murder. So if you can't tell, I feel very passionately about this story. And I actually have been recording, I've been working on the story for over a year, and we had the benefit of 40 hours of secretly recorded phone calls from the shooter, and also about 40 hours of secret calls and body cam and dash cam. So the Journal is putting out a podcast series on it in mid-September. So please look for that, September 15th. So I've been working on that, so I feel very passionately about it. It's taught me, I thought there might be a book in that story, but it really has helped me understand that there's so many different ways to tell stories. And with that type of material, I've come to hear this often, audio is the most visual medium. Podcasts is because you have to picture it in your mind. And so that's been exciting. So someday, I'm not writing a book right now, but I say this all the time, it beats working. It really does.
Well, I can tell you every time I read someone like you, just an incredible author, I can't put the book down. I am so looking for what the next book is. So I mean, I do think, and there are a lot of, well, I know this from Court TV, of course. There are a lot of crazy things that happen out there that need the people who survive.
I mean, you mentioned
need the
Court
story
TV.
told.
This just blew my mind, y'all. So Court TV has been around since the early 90s, and OJ was obviously the first big case on there. But this was by far the most streamed case ever in Court TV history, double the numbers of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Double.
Crazy.
And the Murdaugh murders Netflix series that I was privileged to be a part of was the biggest non-scripted show in the world of 2023. In the world. Nothing was close. It was double Meghan and Harry. I mean, it was approaching like Super Bowl numbers. And about half of the viewers were international. Because one of the things I had, that the very scary time when we didn't know if everybody ever be charged, that 9 months that I didn't know if we were gonna have a resolution in the case, one of the things I did study was dynasties and the nature of dynastic power, and the nature of it is to fail on the 4th or 5th generation. And Alec was the 4th, Buster and Paul were the 5th, and if you look at that, and that's true for the Ming dynasty or the royal family or the Ford family, it just, when you have so much inherited entitlement and no accountability to own it or build something, it just collapses. So I think part of the reason, my theory is that part of the reason that this story resonated globally is because of that. It was familiar to people, like, oh, you know.
So two questions from that. I have a question and a follow-up, Ms. Author. First of all,
And I'm sure you've been at two-part questions.
I'm sure you've been approached by, because you mentioned the Netflix thing. Which I'm sure you've been approached by some company who would like to turn your book into something fabulous.
Well, there are so many books. The library did this extraordinary, I don't know if y'all had a chance to see it. My daughter and I came in a couple weeks ago and took pictures of it. They did this extraordinary bulletin board with, it was like a detective's wall with pens, and a lot of it was other books. I think there are 12 Murdaugh books out right now. And there's so many. I've been on 3 of the 4 Datelines, and there have been multiple documentaries, multiple projects. There's already been a Lifetime movie. So I think one of the challenges is, you know, we think we're so familiar with this story. And in terms of a movie project, when's the last time y'all went to the theater to see a 2-hour like movie? It's just, we go to see, you know, the new Lego movie or Marvel or something. So there's these dramas, and I think this is a Godfather type story to me. So I'd love for it to be treated in that way someday. But just think about like,
It would have to be done correctly.
well, I even think about like the Michael Peterson case in Raleigh. The Staircase came out, 20 years after she was killed. So I do think a story like this will always be resonant. So we'll see, but not yet.
Oops, it was on my, oh, we should probably do Q&A soon. Yeah, I just now thought about that. I think, we're supposed to do Q&A? Okay. Then I won't ask the next, because.
Go ahead.
For my continuing two-part, do you ever have just time for yourself? I mean, I keep asking all these things. What's next? What's next? What are you doing? Where are you going? What do you not do? Have y'all been to the Bahamas or St. Lucia, my favorite place on earth? Or
I think it's been a busy
the
time.
kids would like to go.
It's a busy time. We have Scott and Amelia and Luke and the four of us. We have a lot of fun together. We went to Montreal 3 weeks ago and then went to Niagara Falls, which was awesome. And then we went to see the Killers. My husband found this crazy Killers concert that was going to be at a very small room, and we went to that. So we've squeezed in some fun. But it's a busy time of life. But I do need to get some hobbies. It's apparent.
Celia's
'Cause I'd be
husband
off to college
Scott.
soon.
Celia's husband Scott could teach you pickleball.
Oh.
Well, he's a horrible teacher, though. He would be mean to you. Do you want me to walk around, or are you going to take this? Okay.
Thank you so much for that. So I wanted to start, I collected a few questions ahead of time. I sent out an email and some people emailed back some questions ahead of time. One of them is, in conducting research for your book, how would you characterize cooperation received from law enforcement agencies? Could you share any useful techniques with working with law enforcement in researching cases?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I found actually that the Attorney General's office in South Carolina and SLED, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, which is like our SBI, were very tight-lipped before the trial, very much so. We didn't, and to their credit, I mean, it's not what you would prefer as a journalist for there to be no leaks, but there really weren't that many. But I would say, in terms of what law enforcement displayed during the trial, the testimony from the officers, and then also I mentioned my own timeline. There's a SLED officer who made an 88-page timeline of every beat and just walked. That was when he closed the prosecution's case. He was the last officer. And when he just walked through the timeline, and the defense was trying to press him, well, how do you know this? And he goes, well, you can lie, but your phone can't lie. Just to be so matter of fact and even about it was really pretty incredible. I knew David Owen, the lead SLED agent, to say hello because we sat catty corner to each other in the courtroom for 6 weeks. And it's a very small courtroom. Like, you're in line to use the water fountain behind, Buster Murdaugh or whatever. But I found once he just wanted to tell his story, he felt like it was important that y'all know what it was like and how close it almost didn't happen. So in terms of law enforcement working with us, I wish there were more as y'all know, journalism is in a really difficult moment. There are not enough of us watching the store, particularly in smaller towns, smaller communities. But more is more. More is better. I think I was a night cops reporter for 3 years in Winston-Salem. The funnest job I ever had. It was crazy. But back in those days, we did a lot of ride-alongs, and I would ride along once a month just to see what happened, and building that type of relationship and seeing how much of that work is social work, helping solve these problems in our community. The degree to which we can work together, I think it benefits the public. I really do. Was that from Rich? My friend that I grew up with is a retired law enforcement.
Another question was, this is a kind of long intro to it, but the book was very well researched and written. As a reporter, you stuck to facts and kept opinions out, which makes me curious about your choice of description for Alex and the cast of characters. While all other characters are described by their relationships and demographics, Alex was, accurately, described as disgraced lawyer, convicted murderer, and serial thief. That seems a departure and a bit more personal. How did you approach determining how to characterize people in the book and how to portray them in the book, including your own thoughts about their personalities.
Oh, that's so interesting. That was really hard. Whoever wrote that question is a very observant reader, so thank you. So the cast of characters at the front was the last thing I did. So I had in my heart that I wanted to have a family tree here when you open the book, so you could see it. But I hired a fact checker. One of the best things I did was hire a fact checker because, again, spoiler, the Murdaughs are a very litigious family. And also, I mean, you want to get it right. That's our ethos, right? So I hired this fact checker, and she was just fantastic. And I can remember her, and she works for the New York Times. I always say that she has 2 more Pulitzers than I do because I have 0, and she has 2. But she does this on the side, and it's a terrific job. I remember when I called her, and I was very much a last-minute Charlie. I was like, hey, can you clear your schedule for 2 months to check my book, like, next week? And she was like, well, lucky you. She's like, I followed that case, and I'm just finishing a South Carolina book now. And I was like, oh, yeah, what's it about? And she said, well, have you heard of Eric Larson? And I was like, yeah, I heard of that dude. And he had written, she fact-checked The Demon of Unrest, which is his most recent book. He's also wrote Devil in the White City. And it leads up to where my story picked up. So we had a lot there. But I can remember Julie calling me and she's saying, you don't need a family tree. You need a list of characters. You need that to keep the reader straight because so many people have similar names. And there are so many people. A lot of the emails I get are like, why didn't you name the judge who signed off on the Satterfield case, or why didn't you name so-and-so? And we had the Dostoevsky problem, easy for you to say, I guess, but we had too many names. And so this was my attempt.
That was a wonderful
It was really, but the disgrace, I really struggled with how to describe Alec, but I think in the end, one of the things we do at the Journal often is we realize that, there are a lot of smart people at the Wall Street Journal, including my editor. So I went back to one of my stories and I was like, how did we describe Alec? And we described him as a disgraced lawyer, which he was, right? He's still giving legal advice from prison, actually, but he's a disgraced lawyer. So no, but I don't have any qualms saying that Alec is a bad person and I don't like him. That I don't think that is. I think the facts, that may just be a factual statement at this point, given what we know. So.
Thank you. All right, let's open this up to the audience. Are there any audience questions that we would like to have?
And while she's going there, would you please, another question, I'm sorry I didn't get
Sure.
to, but you talked about how there are different ways stories are told. I was told earlier that I bought the paperback, or I'm about to buy the paperback, I have the hardback, and I have the ebook. Okay. She said I need the audio.
Oh, the question is
audiobook.
the question is the different ways of storytelling. What about the audiobook? I will say that my pride really wanted to read the audiobook myself. This was a labor of love in every shape of the word. And the audiobook is the last thing that is done. After the book has been through legal review, after it's gone to the printers, they just want it to be the final version. And so it was a year ago, like the second week of July, and the book was coming out August 20th. And they had a little audition where I practiced reading the book, and they're like, okay, you're not awful, you can read a book. And they're like, we need to book you in the studio for 8 days. 8 days, all day. And I was like, wow, that sounds like I can't do that. And because I was back at work. And then also, it's not my skill. So I said, well, send me, I'd like to read, so I do read on the audiobook. I read the author's note and the note on sources. But we hired someone to do it. And so they sent me a couple. I said, send me some Southern women. It was like, Lynn, Paul said to Maggie that. It was awful. It was truly horrible. And I was like, oh no. And a lot of y'all that listen to audiobooks know you listen to it at 1.25 or 2, 1.5. I was like, that's not gonna work. I was like, send me the most neutral women that you have. And they sent like 3. But I'm a reporter, so before I listened to it, I Googled them. And one of them had done George R.R. Martin, John Grisham, Kristen Hanna, like Colin McCann, all these writers I love. And I was like, well, she's good enough for them. She's probably good enough for my murder book. And her name is Maggie Meg Reed, and she's a terrific narrator. And she read the book with the right amount. I didn't realize the magic of audiobooks, but like for a memoir, they want the person to read it. Britney Spears reads her book. For a nonfiction book, they want it to be even and for the person to get out of the way. For fiction, you can do like Harry Potter, they do all the voices and stuff. And she was just wonderful. And I wrote her a fan note, and she's, I consider her a friend. I really admire her. So what I didn't realize is that the audiobook has sold almost as well as the hardcover. Wow. Because this is, and if you think about it, it makes sense, because true crime makes up 23% of the top podcasts in this country. And nothing else is even close. Like politics and comedy are like 9%. So true crime readers listen to podcasts, and so you're used to consuming material that way, and it gives you the chance. A lot of my folks, the subjects in the book, listen to it. So
I like to think about the victims in this, and I wondered what you know about how Maggie's family is doing, the Branstetters.
Maggie's family, it has been devastating. It has been devastating. Y'all might know that that Maggie and her older sister Marion, when they were young, lived in Wilmington, and she married a guy from here that went to Cape Fear Academy, and Marion Proctor was that star witness, Maggie's older sister. It has been devastating. It's been very difficult on their parents. So, and they're incredibly private people. So I'm not sure how it would be otherwise. I think so Alec and Buster moved in with Maggie's parents after that summer, and I think it's just really, my understanding is that it's just impossible for her family to truly accept that their daughter and their grandson were killed by him. So I'm not sure that, I don't want to speak for them, but my understanding is that it's been as impossible as you would think.
Obviously, from what we talked about before, I'm a little obsessed with it because of Craig. But I wondered if you ever had an opportunity to talk to Paula Flowers when you were down in Hampton.
I don't know that I did.
So she owns a place called Fletcher's Cafe and Antique Shop in Yamasee,
in Yamasee, okay.
Which is in the middle of nowhere, right? And they have great food. So I happened to be there with a friend. We were on our way to Florida, and I said, "How's your business?" Because I'm looking around thinking, what's around here? And she said, "Oh, it's great because we have lots of law firms." And I went, "Law firms?" Mm-hmm. And at that point, everything had already happened. Yeah. So I asked her if I said, "Like Murdaugh's?" And she said, "Oh yeah." She said Maggie was in here all the time buying things for Buster because he had an apartment and she was buying antiques. Well, then she starts talking about how Buster's gay. So I'm curious, like everybody knew, she said. And I was curious about what has subsequently, because he's married now.
Well, and I'll just stop you there. I think that Buster, as I mentioned, has just endured so much, and the persistent rumors that he is gay, he has denied those adamantly. He's actually suing Netflix, HBO, and Investigation Discovery for defamation, I believe, or libel, for alleging that he was involved and had anything to do with the killing of Stephen Smith. And they went. What he's talking about is in those documentaries, there are a couple of them will have like a montage or reenactment of somebody with red hair with a baseball bat, and a federal judge agreed that that case is going forward, and it looks like it'll be tried in Hampton. So Buster has been adamant he had nothing to do with it. There's no evidence he had anything to do with it. And if I had a nickel for every rumor I heard in Hampton County, South Carolina, oh my Lord of mercy. I mean, I love it down there, but everybody's got a thought about something, and there is no truth to that I know of.
Hello. You opened with the big question: why would a father kill his own son? And while this was all going on, when the housekeeper died, falling up the stairs, I couldn't help but think, was that really an accident? Was that really just a fall? Is it possible that Paul saw his father perhaps have something to do?
There's lots of rumors about that one, about the death of Gloria Satterfield as well, who was the housekeeper who fell down the stairs and died a month later, back in 2018. And there's testimony from Connor Cook, one of Paul's friends who was on the boat. There's testimony in his deposition. He says that Paul kind of let people think that he pushed her, and that whether that's true or not, that's what the rumor was in town. Alec, as y'all know, said that the dogs tripped her, and so he could sue himself for her fall and give money to the kids, which he stole. So, you know, it is very unclear what actually happened there, but my strong sense is, and I tried in the book, particularly in Stephen Smith's case and Gloria's cases, because I tried to go as close to what I can show you. In my endnotes, I'll try to show you the sources of everything I used. But the family believes, and I think the evidence supports, that she had some sort of medical event, like a stroke. Because a couple days earlier, she had a little fender bender where she'd had some sort of fainting spell. And we think of them as the diseases of the working poor. And she had that complex, kind of combination of diabetes and heart problems and all these issues. And so she was young, I think she was 58, but she had a lot going on in her life. And so the family has accepted that and there is their strong sense that nothing nefarious happened there, that she had a medical event, that she went to the hospital, she started to rally, and then 4 weeks later she died. So, but yeah.
What do you believe that Cousin Eddie knows, and what is he up to now?
Cousin Eddie, oh my gosh, Cousin Eddie. So y'all know that's Eddie Smith. And this is my favorite fun fact that did not make it in the book, but I have an elaborate family tree. My poor dad works on our genealogy. I know the Murdaugh genealogy like the back of my hand. I'm not as good as our own families, but so Cousin Eddie is actually a distant cousin. So Alec's great-great-grandfather was Josiah P. Murdaugh, who was at Appomattox, and I mentioned that his brother Lazarus, they called him Laz, Old Laz. Lazarus Murdaugh was killed at Petersburg. Eddie is descendant of the Lazarus side of the family. So in Netflix, when he says, "I'm half Murdaugh, don't tell anybody," he's telling the truth. He has been charged with a number of felonies, as you remember, because he was Alec's kind of bespoke drug dealer and handyman. He's out on bail and has been for almost 3 years. 3 years. He's got a complex health problems too. So he wears an ankle monitor and he's doing okay, but his health is not good. Eddie has said and intimated, particularly in that Netflix interview, which is the most he went out in what he had to say, it is my strong sense that what happened on the side of the road that day is my hunch is that, Eddie meets up with Alec that day. That's the morning after he's been fired. He's just had the confrontation with his best friend. They meet up at the funeral home, which is right by the law firm in downtown Hampton. And he says, "Would you follow me out? I got to do something out here." So then he pulls over, and Eddie, they struggle over the gun. So he pulls out a gun. It's my strong sense that a very likely theory is that Alec at that time he's 6'4". He's enormous. Curtis Eddie Smith is my height, a little taller, but he was already in failing health. Alec, they got to know each other because Alec was his disability lawyer when he went on permanent disability. I think Alec was they struggled over the gun, and Alec was going to shoot Eddie and say, he tried to kill me, I overpowered him, and he's the one who killed Maggie and Paul, because he was out at Moselle every day. And I had some text messages that were provided to me that didn't come out in trial, but were from Eddie. They met up the next day. It's in the book where he said, "Meet me at the fishing hole." Eddie knows a lot. Somebody knows where the guns were tossed into the swamp. Eddie knows a lot, and I think it was a plan that went awry there on the side of the road, in my view.
Can you talk about the title of the book, and was it a conscious decision not to include the Murdaugh name in the main title?
You know, here's the thing that was so hard for me to kind of wrap my mind around, but it makes total sense. You know, I worked 3 years of my life on this book, and whether you pick it up, 50% of it is the cover. It is really important. And so we were worried, this is another fun fact about the book, but if you have it and you open it, the part names, I call them the ghost of titles past. So the first part is the Prince of Hampton County. So on my laptop, that was the working title for years. And I liked it because the Prince of Tides was one county over. Old Buster and Pat Conroy were good friends. And I liked the Prince of Tides for that reason, and I liked Hampton County because of the bridges in Madison County. I was trying to signal to you that the main character in this, in a lot of ways, is Hampton County. So I really liked that title, but in the end, the publisher felt like it wasn't big enough. It's not just about Alec, it's about the whole system. So they said, try again, and I tried again multiple times, and those are the other part names, many of them. And towards the end, right after the legal review is completed and the manuscript's accepted, that's a really big moment, and my editor called me and she's like, well, Val, the good news is we are accepting the manuscript, we love it. The bad news is nobody likes your title. That's true. And it was like in March of 24, March of last year. And so she said, send me 50 titles, 50 titles, and I want them in 3 buckets. I want literary, biblical, and I want true crime, and then dealer's choice, whatever's of interest to you. And I was in a panic. And so you'll see in the end notes, I used the Robert Penn Warren quote about a spider and its web in the epilogue of the book. And for a long time, I wanted to have spider and web in the title. But if you go right now on Netflix and type in spider or web, there's every name in the book is taken, and that's a big part of it too. So that wasn't working. So I went through, like I said, I went through Shakespeare because I love Fatal Vision, right? The story of Geoffrey MacDonald, that's from Shakespeare. Like Something Wicked This Way Comes is from Shakespeare. All these great titles are from Shakespeare. And I wasn't finding things because no man kills an adult son in Shakespeare, nor the Bible. And so I was having a hard time with my literary names, and I went to my husband in a panic. I was like, I don't know what to do here. And he said, well, and this was, a year and a half ago. ChatGPT was not what we thought it was, but Scott typed in, like, give me 10 titles for a nonfiction book about a Southern man who kills his son. And it was priming the pump. We didn't use any of them, but it was kind of like, all right, let yourself go here, gin up 50 titles. And so I did, and I called my friend who lives in Durham. Her name is Bronwyn Dickey. She's a terrific writer, and she wrote a book called Pitbull, and she's from that area. Pat Conroy was her godfather. And I called her and I said, I gotta come up with 50 titles. She goes, all right, let's go, true crime. She's like, 5 shots in the dark. And I was like, actually it was 7. She goes, even better, 7 shots in the dark. And that was the runner-up. But when I graduated from Duke in the early 90s, and at that time Cormac McCarthy had just written All the Pretty Horses, and I read that book, and my English professor was like, well, if you like that one, you're gonna love Blood Meridian. So I read that in college, and I always admired him as a writer. He had died not too long before that. So I was flipping through my copy, and the quote just leapt out at me, there's meanness in the least of creatures, but when God made man, the devil was at his elbow, a creature that can do anything. And I just loved it. I'm like, I wonder if they'll let me call it that. And because it got the word evil's in devil. I mean, it got at the monstrosity of what happened there. And then it allowed me to have the subtitle mention the dynasty. But most importantly, because it didn't say Prince or Alec Murdaugh's name in the title, we didn't have to put his face on the cover. Which was, and this is actually a picture of Moselle. So it was this is really a moment that when they were designing the cover, they assigned an artist at Penguin Random House, and I was like, can I talk to him? I'm like, well, that normally doesn't happen. I was like, I'd love to talk to him. So I Googled him, and I was like, I think maybe I called my dad, because I was like, he doesn't do true crime books. He does all the Star Wars books. So he's like a beautiful artist, and we talked, and he had this concept. This is a drone photo of Moselle from far away in the daytime. and he was able to light it up and make this eerie, beautiful cover. So I feel very fortunate to be the rare author who, they went with my favorite title, and I do love the cover. I'm proud of it.
All right, we have time for one more question, and I have it right here.
Were you ever able to interview him, and if so, what was it like?
Such a great question. Was I ever able to interview Alec Murdaugh, and what was it like? I was not, and a couple reasons for that. I've known Dick Harpootlian really well. He's the lead lawyer for Paul in the boat crash and then for the homicides. And so I went to him and I was like, look, if Alec Murdaugh talks to anybody, it should be me. Here's what I would want to know. And he's like, you're not going to talk to him before the trial. It's a no-go. It's a very, very, very bad idea to let a defendant take the stand or give an interview. He said, but afterwards, we'll see. So I was hopeful. And the head of the corrections at that time was a guy named Brian Sterling, who was, I also known a long time. He's a new U.S. attorney. And of course, he was friends in college with Alec. And I called Brian, I was like, if he comes to state prison, I want to talk to him. I'm just letting you know, I want to talk to him, and I'll write the letters and whatever. And he goes, you're never going to talk to him. South Carolina has a very strict son of Sam law, mostly because of Susan Smith. And that means that prisoners cannot benefit in any way from their acts. And if it's good publicity or whatever, there's some sort of inherent value in that. And they're not allowed to do that. And he said, nobody's ever going to interview Alec Murdaugh. So I didn't get to talk with him. I talked to 200 people, many, 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 many people close to him. And I sat, as close to me and Joan in 6 weeks in the courtroom. And then in Beaufort, they put the media in the jury box when he was sentenced. And he stands up and gives this 50-minute talk. And when he turns directly and looking directly at me, I put my notebook down. I was like, is he looking at me? Because he's watched all of it. He's watched all of it. And he loves to know, what is someone, you can hear him on the phone calls with Buster. Did ABC, I saw an ad, did they have anything new, or was it same old stuff? He watches all of it. And he's looking directly at me and starts talking about how people had ruined his grandfather's name and his great-grandfather's name. And I put my pencil down, I was like, I ruined the Murdaugh name? Me? And then he turns to David Owen, he starts talking about, and I want to say to all the people who love Maggie and Paul, I apologize because my actions in robbing these people led SLED not to look for the real killer. And he's staring right at David Owen, and I texted David, I was like, you're not looking up, and he said, I've heard it all before. And he did the same with Creighton Waters. So no, I've never interviewed him. And the reporter in me has to say, of course I would want to, but I also will add, I don't think he's honest with himself. I don't think he is capable of telling the truth or any self-awareness at all, and that makes for a very, very, a great book subject, but a terrible interview subject. So, I had lunch recently in Columbia with Dick Harpootlian. I had a little UPS sticker made. I was going to send Alec a copy of the book in prison. And he said, don't do that. Don't do it. So in the end, I have not. So I don't know if he's read it. But I do know I wanted the family was not surprised by anything in the book. And we did a lot of research on the history of the family that I did share with the family, things that we found that were really interesting in the 1800s and stuff. So, they're very aware of it, but I did not interview Alec in the end. Y'all, this is just, it truly is a day I'll never forget, and I'm going to cry again. But I can't thank you enough for being here, and I really thank you for reading the book and for coming out today. And thanks, Friends of the Library.
As a quick reminder, we will have pomegranate books out in the lobby. If you still want to purchase a copy, they are available, and Valerie will be doing some signings out there as well. So thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate it, and enjoy the summer at your library.